everyone. Welcome to Danny Chats. This is episode number 8, and today I'm joined by Dan. Hi, Dan. How's it going?
Hey, Dan. Nice
Dan or Daniel?
Well, you know, my mother calls me Daniel, and also Danny, and I have no preference. A lot of people know me as Yoga Dan, but lately I've just been going by Dan.
Yeah. And whereabouts are you? You're calling from?
I'm in downtown Lower Manhattan, New York City, United States of America.
Yeah, you was actually just showing me out your window. It's crazy. You can see the Goldman Sachs building, and you're like right in the center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right underneath the Freedom Tower.
Yeah, right. But it looks so deadly quiet there at the moment.
You could say that again. Yeah. It's like 12 o'clock. Usually, this place would be swarming with human beings. It's lunchtime. It's quite a vibe. It's very wild.
Yeah, man.
Very wild.
Obviously we got talking because you've had a liver transplant, but I have no real idea why and how that all came about. So do you want to sort of go back to when your diagnosis or whatever it was?
There seems to be a cross in the storyline. I was diagnosed with Wilson's disease.
Yes.
In 2011, but knock on wood, I was on a transplant list. I was in liver failure and was dying, but I never had to have a transplant.
Oh, wow.
And I'm super grateful for that. But the Wilson's disease itself is just, I have liver disease and cirrhosis of the liver, dealing with things on a daily basis that suck. But as far as the transplant, my uncle 30 years ago, he had a transplant.
That was it. Yeah, I remember you saying that was it.
He and then basically he was fine, but unfortunately, and I would like to share with your audience as well, is make sure that you continue to take your anti-rejection drugs, because he didn't, and then he recently passed away within the last 4 years. So it was unfortunate.
I'll make sure I take mine religiously. So Wilson's disease. So when was you diagnosed?
I was diagnosed in the summer of 2011.
So not too long ago then.
No, I mean, it seems like, as you know, I had it all my entire life. My mother is asymptomatic, and her brother, my uncle, was diagnosed that 30 years ago. So when I was like 10, he was diagnosed. He was on death's bed. They had no idea. And then fortunately, we lived in Michigan. I grew up there. So University of Michigan actually has one of the greatest medical staff for treating Wilson's disease. Dr. Brewer he did my uncle's transplant. So my mother was asymptomatic, and, she was making sure that, and I have an older brother, that we would never have it. And the doctor's like, oh, the odds of your children having this, because it's recessive on both sides of the gene, the genome or whatever, the male and female. Yeah. So long story short, it turns out I have Wilson's disease. And it didn't come to fruition until the summer of 2011. But now that I learned about it, I've had it my entire life, and it sucks. It definitely sucks.
Did you become really ill in 2011, or was there something else medical going on that found it out?
I'll tell you. So I've been a yoga instructor since 2003. I've lived a very healthy lifestyle. I turned to being a raw vegan in 2009.
Yeah.
Fast forward, this happens to be probably the worst diet somebody with Wilson's disease could be on.
Yeah.
So I am, I'm living in Northern California, and I'm running a yoga studio, and I'm working at a fantastic vegan, predominantly raw vegan restaurant living my greatest life. And then, I don't know, out of the blue, I started to become really, really, really tired. And then my ankles, out of nowhere, they started to swell up like softballs.
Yeah.
My feet blew up. Did that
Yeah.
happen to you?
Yeah, my feet and more my stomach, water
Oh,
retention for me.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that
So
was the next part, like the distension in my stomach
you look
was
like you're pregnant.
nuts. It
Yeah.
totally. I have some pictures that it's absurd. It is absolutely absurd, in the kind of tension that created in my body. Horrible.
Yeah, I mean, I had stretch marks. I don't know whether they're there now because it was a long time ago, but there was definitely stretch marks and stuff. It was, like you say, it was massive.
Yeah. Um, and so I chalked it up to just being like tired, and like we call it nut gut when you drink too much nut milk. Because
Yeah.
I mean, I consumed literally, like, I consumed everything you're not supposed to eat, uh, having Wilson's disease.
Yeah, so you were probably eating like beans, nuts, and
Not necessarily the beans, but how about every nut, like Brazil nuts, macadamia nuts, almonds,
yeah,
and made milk out of it. So I was consuming it in the liquid form. So it's not even just like the pulverization, just I was drinking it, and it was like everything I needed to made my smoothies. Like it was like my meals were shakes, and I was in the best shape of my life. Like, so I was fully shredded and ripped, and then all of a sudden my stomach descends out. It was really weird looking.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that actually I'm not sure what the question was.
So you're obviously so your stomach started swelling, and then what happened from there? Did you go
Oh,
for tests or
yeah.
straight to the
So
hospital?
I don't have health insurance. I have to go to the free clinic, so to speak, in the United States, because there's you have to pay for health insurance out here.
Yeah, I've had a few discussions.
And I'm dealing with a doctor who, thank God, like, she loved her job, loved being there, but like you clearly can tell, I mean, like, she didn't have everything, all of her resources,
Yeah,
and I just was really, transparent with her, and I was like, well, my grandfather has cataracts, and there's cancer in our family, and my uncle had Wilson's disease. Oh, what's that? And then she remembers that from her, it was really just kind of like kismet, in that sense that, like, she dug deep into that.
yeah,
We did the tests, the blood test came back, and so I moved to Northern California in July. By um, Thanksgiving in the United States is the 24th of November. I was pretty much on death's bed. I couldn't swallow anything and keep it down. And yet I'm still eating a raw vegan diet because
yeah.
I haven't been diagnosed
Totally
yet.
different. Yeah,
But I would eat chia porridge like it was, I loved chia porridge. It was great, but my body was just rejecting it, and I
yeah.
was living by myself. And then the scariest part, and I'd love to hear my body started to just become like rigor mortis. Like, things would just get stuck, and I freaked out, like, genuinely freaked out. Like, like, my muscles started to contract and stay like that. So my hands would go like this. Now, reverse a couple years, right? And I would be able to do that, but then it would like pop back, and I'd be like, oh, what the hell was that? I don't know. But I was able to short circuit electricity all the time.
Right.
So, like, I would touch like an outlet, and it would create a current, and crazy things like that with electricity that I remember, that kind of, like, I thought was cool. Like, I didn't, there was no
It's
like, oh,
wow.
maybe I should see somebody about this. This might not be. I thought it was a superhero,
Yeah, yeah.
and I'm living my best life, and I'm in my 20s, my later 20s, I would say. I'm in the best shape of my life, and I just chalked it up to, like, I'm something that, I'm an alien, and we'll put it that way. So by November, that's when I finally was like, okay, I'm gonna go to the doctor. So July, August, September, October. Like by September, October, things started to become a little strange. The feet and things like that. Like I was tired, but it wasn't fully visual. Like I didn't start to notice these things.
Yeah.
So by November, and then it took a month to organize everything to get back to ironically Michigan, right? Because my family's there, best doctors out there.
Yeah.
I've been diagnosed, and it was Christmas Eve 2011 that I was admitted to University of Michigan's Taubman Center liver hepatology unit, gastroenterologist unit, and that's where everything changed. You know, I was out of my element. I was no longer. I don't remember a lot of it because I just kind of was like giving up. I was on a liver transplant list like immediately. Like my what's that score? It's got 4 letters.
Yeah, I'm not very good at this. This is another chat that I need to do with someone that's bang up on all their numbers, because with me, because we've got the NHS, I kind of just like fully trust them, and I just let them deal with all the figures, the technical sides, and I'm like, yeah, if that's what you say, that's what I'll do.
Really?
Yeah. I'm not someone that looks up. So I don't know anything about the figures or sort of tests that they're generally. I know generally what tests they're running, but you know, I'm not bang up on it all.
There was like a culmination of blood tests and the the urgency of a liver transplant.
Yeah.
So these levels, it's on the tip of my tongue, and I just can't remember. But it was a certain test that was like I was in like the upper 20s, and by 30 it was like you need a liver transplant.
Yeah.
Like no. So I was in that like that borderline of it. And so that's how we were able to gauge, you know, like, oh, my numbers were going down, and that level went down, and I just didn't want to have a liver transplant. I wanted to die. I was like, I'm good. I lived a really good life. I think I'm gonna just call it quits right now. And now I'm in my mid 40s. I'm like, thank God I didn't. But there's certainly that moment where I was like, I just don't know if I'm built for what you went through, which I can only imagine. I can't imagine that level of, you know, commitment to want to live that like that goes along with the transplant.
Yeah, I mean, when I was younger, when I was diagnosed, they wanted to give me a liver transplant. They told me about the 2 options. They said, we can try the medication, but my liver was really damaged. And they said the best option, or what we believe, is liver transplant. But I wanted to, the same as you, I just thought I was too young to go through all of that. So I tried the medication, and it worked for 20-something years. So it was really, you know,
really
worth it, yeah.
And then what happened?
Do you know what? It's really weird. I was going for yearly tests at the hospital. They said to me at some point I would have to have a transplant, most likely. But I was going for my yearly tests, and I went up for one. And I don't even think I'd had the blood tests that year, because normally I go there, have the blood tests, and then they send me home. And I was sat down with the doctor, and he said, we just think now's the time to give you your liver transplant. So although I knew it was coming, it was still sort of out of the blue. And I felt fine. Although now looking back, like you say, you don't really realise how ill you are. I didn't realise how tired I was. I didn't know the difference. Now I've had a liver transplant. I'm awake at 5 in the morning. You know, I'm sort of, I can stay up to 11, 12 and not be tired. Whereas before I was just tired all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean,
tired is the worst, man. I mean, when you have a lot of energy and all of a sudden it's not there anymore, you're like, what the, like that was for me just like, you know, because my energy was my currency. It's how I made a living. It's how I have made a living. And, you know, at that time, I was teaching over 20 classes a week. I was running a yoga studio. I was also then working at a restaurant called Cafe Gratitude. And I was just like, maybe I'm just working too hard. Maybe I need to just kind of like take a beat, and then I'll be fine. I put my legs up the wall. It's part of a yoga practice. It really helps to, take some of that swelling down.
Yeah.
Well, they were still the size of softballs afterwards. And then I started to just really catch on that like something's not right there. And I just didn't want to close my eyes to it anymore. But that ultimate, diagnosis that you're going to have a liver transplant. You were diagnosed very early, which
Yeah.
If I had proper diagnosis, I would have been diagnosed at 10. I can only imagine how my life would have been different because of, the strict diet and like not like how often do you eat chocolate now?
All the time. But then even I could eat chocolate.
Well, when you were on your medication.
When I was on medication, they said
Really?
It's fine. And when they did the liver transplant, they tested the old liver for copper levels, and they said it was fine. The copper levels were normal. It was just because it was so scarred from when I was younger. Yeah.
Interesting. So it's just a cirrhosis.
Yeah, it was just a cirrhosis. And there was a clot that had formed on the liver as well. So I was on like injections, blood thinners. So it was just starting to go a bit wrong. So I think they just sort of said, now's the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, the medication worked for a long time. I mean, I went traveling, I'd been to uni, I did everything that, normal people do whilst I was on that medication. So it was only towards the last, I'd say, year or two before I had my transplant that now I look back, I was tired all the time and, I could see a difference. But before then, the medication worked fine.
Really? Did you have stomach problems? I always get the worst cramps, and it just feels like it's just an issue that every
day I fought nausea, and towards the end it got worse and worse, and I realized that you shouldn't have to be nauseous every day, or that's not common, but to me it was just such a normal thing. Every day was being nauseous, and if I didn't take my tablets at the right time or with food, I'd be sick. And but it became so normal. I just, thought everyone was like that.
And did you have a support group as a kid?
No. Weirdly enough, I didn't talk about Wilson's disease or anything before my transplant. Like, there was a lot of friends. When I got told I needed my transplant, I was like, all right. I went on Facebook and I wrote a little post, and I was just saying I'm probably going to be a bit absent for the year. And a lot of my friends didn't even know. They were like, we didn't even realize you was ill. Like, some of them had seen me maybe take medication, and my girlfriend, she knew. But even when we were getting together, she said, what's all this medication? I just stopped me going crazy. Like,
did you, and did it have to be refrigerated? Did you take Ciprin?
No, mine didn't have to be refrigerated. I remember when I went to college, it was in Hall's residence, and I told them that I needed it refrigerated just so I could have a fridge in my room. But yeah, no. So yeah, because that's the thing. I was on penicillamine, and you guys in America don't often seem to take that.
I was taking Ciprin, which was absurdly like $100 a pill, and I had to take 3 times a day. Compound that with the Galzin, which is the zinc. It was just nausea, and you just kind of like going, well, if this is the alternative to taking or having a transplant, I don't know what, this isn't a good situation to kind of have to choose from. And I definitely contemplating like going, maybe I definitely probably should, but then there's a whole nother set of pills obviously that you got to take. I mean, but who knows what for those, affect you. And did you have any any psychological problems that you were saying like they've helped me from going crazy?
I don't think I really had any bad neurological problems.
Any shakes?
Yeah, more so now, to be fair, after my transplant. I don't
Really?
remember shaking too bad before. I did really bad at school. Like, I'm very, very dyslexic. Reading's definitely not a strong subject of mine.
Me
But
too.
but I try not to blame it on Wilson's or think it's Wilson's. I just think I was not lazy at school, but it wasn't my highest interest.
I take a different approach to that, and I, because I definitely felt totally uh, not at the same pace as most of my classmates, and I was diagnosed with ADD in third grade,
Yeah.
which instead of being diagnosed with ADD, that's where I believe it was Wilson's disease. Like my body used to like act out. Like I would be doing all those things that you see like the children in India doing because they're fighting something internally that's like pretty much killing them. And I used to do that, and then so they thought it was a muscle tic, which that's one of the things, but that also then affected me neurologically. Um, a lot of anger, a lot of mood swings, um, and you can only imagine. I've always been tall. I've always stood out. I've always had more of a the focus on me getting in trouble. So I was always a troublemaker, teachers, and then compound that with like a learning disability and like feeling frustrated that you just don't get it. Like, I don't understand this.
Oh, I
And
definitely had that the
mhm.
feeling frustrated. I remember being at home to talk about it, but basically in tears in bed one night from being at school, and I was just I don't understand. And my dad sort of sat down and he told me about Einstein and all these other people that were at school maybe they struggled or they were dyslexic or they weren't perfect in every way, but they were still good in their field, and yeah, it sort of that helped. Yeah, I
That's
definitely
nice.
had that feeling of struggling and not knowing why.
My,
What just
I'll tell you, my
wanted
father, he tried to teach me math, and oh my God, it was just um, it wasn't a good vibe. And, and then I love my mother. She tried to help. And, that's why I think I'm a really good teacher. It's why I've become a teacher as a profession, because I've learned like how you approach educating people on things that they just don't either get, or they're not comprehending. And like, so you can't just be like, 4 times 4 is 16, moving on. No, I don't get that. I need break that down. I don't understand that. And I'm
yeah,
using that as a very like broad,
I
but
know
like, so if you don't get it, then I don't know, I'm sorry, just can't help you,
yeah.
so I
Yeah, no,
I
I was talking about my dad, but I also lived with my stepdad for a long time. And when I was at secondary school, he got me English tutor, and she taught a few other subjects as well when she was around. But that's how far behind I was. Like he was like, you need extra help.
right.
But yeah, again, I just thought that was kind of normal.
Sure. As I said prior, like once I was diagnosed and I learned about it a little bit more, the doctor was like, a lot of tall people have been diagnosed, a lot of redheads. I'm like, man, if only that could have been in the equation earlier on, who knows? I mean, my whole life could have changed. But even like as an athlete, I just remember like I was really poor in my flexibility. Like I would get hamstring cramps. Did you ever get any hamstring cramps?
No, see, I was the complete opposite. I was like the fastest in the county. I was fastest in school. I was really, really good at football. And then that all just started to sort of get slower and slower and slower as the year went on, or as time went on. And I couldn't understand why. And then after I had my diagnosis and I came out, I think I went and played football shortly, but because I wasn't as good as what I was, I just didn't have that heart anymore.
Interesting.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I mean, there's I've always been an athlete. I was a decent athlete as a kid, and then I pursued basketball as my one sport versus like and here we call it soccer, right? And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love soccer. I was fascinated with soccer. I was the goalie. I also was a forward, played a little sweeper in that sense. Like I just really felt comfortable playing soccer more than basketball. perfectly, to be honest with you. But as a kid, I didn't really have like a Beckham to go, maybe I can be like Beckham when I grow up, like but I heard be like Mike, and I'm tall, and I kind of was like, all right, I also love basketball. I didn't not love basketball. Happened to be really good at soccer and not as good as basketball, but I stuck with basketball and had to go down this path. A choice I made. Ended up playing in college and, dealt with all sorts of experiences because of that. But just knowing that, like, growing up in the middle school years, like my sit and reach, my flexibility was so poor. And ironically, when I was diagnosed and they're checking me out and they're like, if you didn't practice yoga, which is what my profession is now and what I've been involved with the last 20 years, there's probably no chance you'd be alive.
I'll make sure I put a little link up to your, have you got, send me over your website and I'll put a link up below the video and stuff, because what you do is really cool.
Yeah, it's a lifesaver. I mean, I've always considered, I got into yoga through back injuries, right, from basketball.
Same.
But prior, really, I just was never a flexible person, and I never really wanted to question that. So I became really, really strong, really big, and being 6'8", at one point I was teetering on a 300-pound person when I was injured, but when I was athletic, I was like 265, 250, and I just feel like that was just too much mass. I shrunk all the way down to about 215, 205, fluctuated in that 225 range now, and I'm so much happier. There's so much more fluidity in my movement, which has benefited me. But the doctor's like, if you didn't practice yoga, because like I was saying, like my hands were like freezing up, my muscles, my bicep I would just start to go into this rigor mortis, which is scary as hell when you're like. I was
just about to say, that was terrifying.
Extremely. But as a kid, it happened all the time doing a hamstring stretch. And, they're like, oh, your hamstrings. No, the kind of pain that I used to experience that I couldn't really express as a kid of what was going on with my hamstrings was what happened as an adult when I was going through these like contractions in my muscle and they wouldn't release. Like you're like, oh, it's just that easy. Where my hamstring would lock up and it would just stay like that, and I would be in excruciating pain. Now fast forward, the last time that happened, it was 2014. So I've already, I'm on the medication. I'm already married, and thank God my wife at the time, she like had to like dig her elbow into my hamstring. But you know why it was happening is because I was off my diet. I was like, oh, I'm going to eat this and I'm going to eat that. I'm going to drink this. Let's even talk about drinking, right? I've never been able to hold alcohol down, ever, for being such a big guy.
Yeah.
I didn't even like alcohol, though. Something I couldn't even, every time I drank, I'd throw up. I mean, that right then and there, you should probably, it wasn't a lot either. But at the same time, I would not have a governor on how much is enough. Because you're supposed to drink, you get drunk. It's not like in your neck of the woods where you have a pint with your fish and chips and you enjoy that. Like in America, it's like you have 7 pints and then maybe you have some fish and chips, because it's drinking first and then it's something you do afterwards.
That's very much British culture as well.
Oh, is it?
Very much, yeah. Pre-drinks before the drinks.
Yeah. So alcohol is poisoning.
Yeah, definitely.
Before my understanding of it, so I was just a lightweight. And as an athlete, I said, well, I don't really need alcohol. It's not going to help me get into my career any further. So I made a choice not to drink or to try it out. Yeah. But now, like, if I'll have a sip of wine, I'm gone. I'm like, I'm toasted, I'm buzzed, and it's great. But I know my liver's like, what are you doing? Like that's how poor my liver really is. Yeah. And the liver in yoga, what I've learned is it relates to anger.
Okay.
Right? So that brought this insight into like, holy moly, like that makes a lot of sense for a lot of people who are alcoholics, like who are drinking excessively and what.
Yeah, okay.
So Yeah, like you drink and you become happy, or you drink and you become even more of a son of a bitch. But eventually, you're always going to end up going down that darker path with alcohol, which relates to your liver, because your liver's like, I can't work with you anymore.
Well, I mean,
I got to go.
we know. I mean, once your liver starts going, other organs start to go. The brain stops to function properly. The liver is, probably up with the heart. One of the most important organs, really.
Sure, it's the filter that you only get one unless you're given the chance to have a replacement. But that's something that you can. The heart is a lot harder, because there's a lot more conditions that you'll develop diseases and things like that. But like, I feel like the liver is so. There's so much more within the liver that it's out of our hands unless we can really take responsibility for it. Unless you're dealing with a genetic disease that has nothing to do with. When I tell people I have a cirrhosis of the liver and liver disease, they're like, oh, I mean, they're assuming I'm an alcoholic. They're assuming that I've drank, for my entire life, and I'm like, no, it's non-alcoholic fatty liver disease.
Yeah.
What is that? Tell me about it. I had to learn myself what that was. But it sure as hell has made my life a lot easier to process, knowing that it wasn't me. Just like that learning disability as a kid, it wasn't me. It's not something that like I contracted.
Yeah.
It's genetic. It's in a coding that predates dinosaurs, if you will. It's kind of fascinating that way.
So how are you feeling now? You're on your medication. I obviously see you're out working. You're doing bits.
Yeah. Every day is a new day. Prior to the pandemic, business was great. I've been really pursuing postural ergonomics and working with people, ironically, in the office space on how to set their desk up properly and how to work with posture and how that relates to well-being, productivity, creativity, these channels. And now it just so happens that now I do it virtually, similar to our Skype session here. I do that with people via, this means of communication, but I miss being able to put, hands on people and have a sense of, connection that has always been a way for me to know I'm doing something. I can feel transformation happening within my hand, similar to when I was able to short circuit electricity. I can feel the tissue change, and I missed that. I certainly missed that, but it just celebrated 6 years of marriage last month. Got to give it up for my wife. She is a saint for putting up with me. She's really, really good about making sure I stick to my diet. And you need that. You need that kind of advocacy, and you need that kind of
definitely
in your corner.
Well, like you say, sticking to the diet can be one of the hardest things. So if you're with somebody that eats everything, it would be hard to resist.
Yeah. I know. I used to eat shrimp and lobster and crab, but here's the funny thing, right? I was a raw vegan before I had to shift this diet, which brought me back to being an omnivore, where they were like, well, eating meat is actually better for you. It's going to help to extract the proteins from your body. The proteins are going to chelate the copper and all these things. And I was like, oh, okay. And honest to God, I felt better. I started eating meat again, and I felt better. Started with chicken, turkey, and then would bring in some red meat. And it really, really, it was a total shift. I don't know. but it's been very helpful, and I've stuck with it, and I haven't looked back. And if anything, my vanity is the only thing that really I'm bummed about, because when I was raw vegan, I mean, I was in the best shape physically, aesthetically of my life. But it's a little harder when you eat meat to keep that same chisel for my body type and my blood type, was what I found out. Just because I was able to really adopt that raw vegan lifestyle and flourish, that some people don't. Some people are not capable of living that way, and
I don't
always
even
hungry.
I was gonna say, I don't even want to find out if I am capable. I'm happy. I like it. I like eating everything.
Yeah, I think that's what being well balanced and well rounded is about. Certainly. And also knowing where you're sourcing your food from is very helpful. Gruesome things. I don't know how it is in London, but in the United States, there's some very gruesome means of factory farming, and I just kind of visualize in London, you guys have a lot more grassy knolls and happy cows and the milks, and there's not as many GMOs out there than there are here, though, right?
No, weirdly enough, there's a bit of a controversy over here at the moment, because we obviously had Brexit, which means we signed out of Europe, and it looks like we're going to be doing more trade deals with America and started taking on more American meat.
Is that why Trump and him are buddy?
Yeah.
Boris and Trump?
Yeah. So a lot of people don't want it. Some people are blinded to it. They're like, oh, if the Americans eat it, we'll eat it. It's fine. But luckily for me, well, my sister...
Scary.
Yeah, my sister's got a tiny small holding on the back of her house, and she's got chickens, goats, sheep, pigs. So we get some food from there. So, it's not all bad. We know where some of it's come from.
That's great.
There are a lot of independent farms that you can go to still here. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming on. I just checked the time. It's like well over half an hour, but it's good.
Well, us Danny's. What's your middle name?
Hi. I don't have a middle name.
No.
So, yeah, I was christened Danny Hiles, not Daniel, not anything. Because that used to be another thing when I was growing up. All the teachers and sort of any peers, they'd be like, are you sure you're not a Daniel? No, I'm christened Danny. That's on my birth certificate and everything.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, I was Daniel. I was born Daniel. Certainly born Daniel. But anyway, it's been great. Thank you for, for having this platform, and any with your audience, anything I can do to offer guidance, any questions, they can reach out to me. My Instagram is Mr. Yoga Dan. It's spelled out MISTER, and Sproga.com is my website.
Yeah, I'll make sure that's in the comments and everything like that below, or in the video subscription. Yeah, thank you very much, and we'll stay in touch. And when I come out to America, it'd be lovely to meet up in New York.
We'll have a non-alcoholic pint.
Yeah, definitely.
That's beautiful.
Definitely.
Well, I appreciate it again, Danny. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Daniel.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye, buddy.